Welcome back to Rerouted, where through our interviews we give you the tools you need to create the life and career that you want. On today's episode, I interview Nicole D'Arcangelo. She is the author of the Jadeson Journals and co-founder of the Double Noble Foundation. This career is the true embodiment of nonlinear. It was a lot of fun recording this episode. We talk about her early career as an actor. We talk about her moving to Japan to save money. We talk about how she worked in the White House for a while and even how she was a karate teacher. It's all over the place. It's a lot of fun. I'm excited for you to give it a listen. Let's hop into it. Nicole, thank you so much for joining me today. It's great to have you.
Thank you for having me. I hope
All
I'm
right,
interesting.
I want to start by asking you, since you're very involved and busy, what does a typical week, and maybe even a month look like for you and what you do?
If anyone really wants to know that, I always say my resume is eclectic because
Hmm.
it is like you said all over the place. A typical week for me, let's see. Well, I have a full-time job at a nonprofit where I'm the programs and events person. I plan all of those things. We actually just finished our flagship gala this past Thursday, so I'm tired, but I survived it. We made it. And then, of course, as an author, I write or work with my interns or like promoting books, and that is pretty much daily. And then I also started my own nonprofit, which is slow going at the moment. So now that the my work gala is over, I can get back into my nonprofit gala. And then aside from all that, just for my fun outlet, I am also a historical ghost tour guide. So occasionally I will have to go out at night and talk about dead people.
That's awesome. Okay. I also want to ask, when you're talking about all these various things that you do, how do you balance that and how do you prioritize whether that be your day job or that be the things that you're doing outside? What does that look like for you?
So for the day job, on days when I don't have events, so anyone who works in events knows your schedule is not typical. You are all over the place. It kind of goes with whenever the event is happening. Once the event is over and I don't have anything like hot on my plate at that moment, I make sure I give myself that when my 8 hours is up, I really need to get out of there. It's really easy to just fall into, oh, I can get this done. But you know what? Work is always going to be there. It's like it just more comes in. So the longer you stay, it's just you have to have that mental like, okay, my 8 hours is up, I gotta go home. So that makes it easier. And then when it comes to working with my interns for my book promotional stuff, I scheduled meetings with them and one-on-ones, and I kept them the same time all the time. So I always knew I had something at that point, so I was make sure I didn't plan anything else. And same things with the ghost tours that I do, just to pick up a little extra dough. I plan my schedule out. They allow us to schedule it a month in advance, so I always know a month ahead of time when I'm doing it. And if I know I have one-on-ones, I don't schedule myself that day. And I try to take Sundays off. I mean, you with the exception, but I try to take Sundays off, just because you need a day to decompress.
Hmm. Okay. That makes a lot of sense. I'm also curious, how'd you get into ghost touring?
So, I am a classically trained actor, and once a performer, always a performer. I enjoy giving tours. I consider myself a history junkie. I like to learn things, and then they just get stuck in my head. So why not tell them to people? So when I was looking for some kind of creative outlet, I saw tour guiding, and I was like, that mixes my history and performing all together. So it just kind of seemed like a natural fit. I've been doing it for a few years now. So
Okay, cool. Well, you brought me to the perfect segue because I do want to talk about your performing. Can you tell me a little bit about your college experience?
So my college experience, I went to school for dramatic arts. I had a scholarship to do dramatic arts. I was considering doing a double major in business, but since my scholarship was dramatic arts and business school would have kept me a year longer, I decided against it and just went full force with the acting degree. And then after school, I actually toured with a small production company. We did plays about minority issues. So we traveled the country just going to different universities, putting on plays. And that was fun for a while. But again, people's misconception, the people you see on TV and movies, that's like a very like small 2 to 3% of people that are making money. Most of us don't make money. I was making like $50 a performance. You can't live off of that. So you have to have some other kind of job to supplement. And then in order to move on from those little things, I moved to Japan to save money so I could move to LA to pursue acting. And that was pretty much it. I loved my college career. I loved putting on plays, and it segued into what I do now. People always say, "What do you do with a dramatic arts degree?" And I tell them, I am an amazing public speaker. If you want to just give me a speech, I'll get up there and perform it for you, no problem. I don't have to know the subject, but I can act like I do.
That's great. I'd love to hear that that's something that there's a really tangible lesson learned, or like lessons that you've kind of taken through the rest of your career through acting. Are there any others?
Well, I think, as I said, I remember things a lot. As an actor,
Sure.
you have to memorize lines. I am really good with, especially with short-term retention. If you need to look something over, you're just trained to retain it. You don't necessarily have to retain it for a long period of time, but if there's something work related, like a presentation or anything like that, you have a good retention where it doesn't take you nearly, well, myself, I'm speaking, but anyone else doing it, if with a theater degree, it doesn't take you as long to prepare because you already have that short-term memory thing trained really well on how to. And that's normally my opening when I do my ghost tours, is I tell them I'm a trained actor, so I'm really good at memorizing things and regurgitating them again. I don't think I say it quite like that, but basically, that's it.
You also mentioned something. You said that you moved to Japan to save money. I don't think
Hmm.
anybody has ever said that in the history of the world. So I'm curious, can you tell me about that? What do you mean by that?
So I was living in the South because I went to school in the South, and the cost of living is much cheaper. So I wasn't quite making the money to actually leave and go anywhere, and there was no way I was going to be able to move to LA and pursue acting. I also love traveling, and I'm like, how can I travel and make money? So I got a job teaching English as a second language in Japan. Japan pays really well. Thailand was also an option there. Beautiful country. Teachers make a decent amount of money, but you don't make enough money. Korea was another option, and China and everything. But Japan, it was a safe country, especially since I didn't know the language or anything, and they paid well. So I was able to move to Japan, work, save money, pay off some bills and things. I didn't really have much of a college debt. I was very fortunate with that. And so then I was able to save money in a year and a half, and then I moved to LA.
And then from LA, when you were in LA, you spent a lot of time pursuing acting. Okay.
I
Or
did.
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. When you're in LA and you go on auditions, you're considered a working actor. So I call that my pro bono work because you don't get paid to do those things. But I was considered a working actor. And again, it's the same thing. I was getting roles and things, but a lot of them they don't pay well. So I was getting paid $100 a day, and you can't live off of that. So I continued teaching. That's what I was doing in Japan, is teaching English as a second language. So I continued doing that. So it gave me the opportunity to audition in the afternoon, teach in the morning.
Nice. It seems like you find a way to get what you want to do done, and work around that. That's cool.
I'm
That's
pretty sure
very
people
cool.
call me a hustler because I just figure it out and I just get it done. Yeah.
Nice. Okay then. So then after you finished um your time in LA or pursuing acting, what happened next for you?
Um, I decided I wanted to be closer to family, not too close to family, you know what I mean. So I just wanted to be back on the in my and I'm from the East Coast originally. However, I have until my current place of living, I haven't lived anywhere longer than 6 years. So I moved quite a bit, and I was like, well, I don't want to go back to the states that my family live in. So where do I want to go? And I actually went to a friend's wedding who lived outside of DC, and I was like, it's pretty. I like it. I'll just move here. And so I've been in we call it the DMV. I don't know if you're aware of
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
Most people don't know what that means, especially when I moved here. When people said, I'm going to the DMV, I'm like, who goes to the DMV and is excited about that? That doesn't make sense to me. But for anybody listening that doesn't know, it's District of Columbia, Maryland, and Virginia. They just say DMV for fun. But it's not the actual motor vehicles. We're not going there.
Well, okay
But yeah,
then.
so that's how I ended up
Hmm.
here.
Nice. What do you so you when you got to DC, what type of work did you do?
Well, so that's a fun story. I decided I didn't want to teach anymore. I had been teaching for a while at that point. So I was looking for jobs, and I was like, I was up for anything. I mean, I'm sure you've noticed on my resume, I'm up for whatever. Let's just give it a try. And I saw a job for just an office job, but it was at a karate school. And I thought, and they were offering as like a bonus is you got to practice for free. So I thought, well, I'll save money. I won't have to join a gym and I can just do an office job and that will be that. So I went in for the interview and I realized very quickly that they had not read my resume because I mentioned something about teaching and I saw everyone in the room's eyes light up and they were like, you teach. And I was like, well, yeah, that's on my resume. And one of them said, well, we didn't actually read anybody's resume. If you did the cover letter in a resume, we called you in for an interview because we figured you could follow instructions. So they called me in without paying attention to any of that. So they asked me, they're like, have you ever taught about teaching karate? And I said, I don't know karate. And they said, but have you ever thought about teaching it? It's like, but I don't know it. And we had that same conversation for about 5 minutes. I was a little confused at this point. I was like, what is happening? And so I was like, well, I mean, they kind of were like, well, could you teach it? And I was like, well, I'm sure I could teach it if I knew what it was, like if I knew what I was doing. So they had me go into the bathroom and change into a gi, and they were gonna, teach me something and try me out. This is probably not appropriate, but I'm gonna say it anyway. I was in the bathroom changing, and I'm like, you know what? All those years in LA, and this is the first time I've been asked to get naked in an interview. But no one wanted me for my body out in LA. But apparently here, they were like, yeah, go ahead, go put this on. So I go back out, I memorize it again. Theater background, I memorize very quickly. So I memorized it. I, just duplicated what the guy did, and they decided I was teachable so that then I could teach. So I walked in for an office job and I walked out a karate instructor. It's not a normal interview. So that's what I did for the first couple of years I was here.
Okay, what about after that?
Um, as you can imagine, being a martial arts instructor is a lot of wear and tear on the body, and my body had
Totally.
said basically stop. So
Uh,
I was looking for something else, and at the time, one of my college friends, her mother had worked at the White House, and there was a position open for a historical position. A lot of people don't know that it's not all political people that are at the White House. There is a historical staff there. It's very small. It's basically, once administrations change over, the office still has to operate regardless of what's happening. So they have a very small historical staff. So there was a position available for that. I went in, I interviewed, and that was it. And then I was there for quite a while.
I'm very curious about the experience of interviewing for roles when you have such an eclectic background, what that is like. Just because, quite frankly, I'm very much I'm a full time college student. So it's something where I got a nice little bow on me, so to speak. It's a pretty easy package to sell sometimes. But I'm curious
Hmm.
what your experience is as you're interviewing for different places. How do you try and sell yourself?
Honestly, I think that's kind of the easiest thing to do
Okay.
because you always have a story. So aside from all of these jobs that I have mentioned, when I finished college, I also wanted to make a little extra money, so I got a certificate in bartending. I didn't want to wait tables, but I was like, well, I can bartend. So no matter where I moved, minus Japan, I always had a bartending job. And it was banquet bartending. So again, I could make my own hours and do that. And again, as a bartender, you get all kinds of stories too. But you kind of just have an answer for everything because no matter what question they throw at you, you probably have the experience because you've already done something similar. But you also have interesting stories to tell because I always tell, especially when I'm working with interns or anyone like helping them with the resume or interview techniques. One of my things that I always tell them is always have interesting or funny story personally about yourself. Don't just go in and talk about your resume. They can read your resume, they don't care about that. Talk about yourself. So talk about you because they're hiring you to see how personable you are. So that's pretty much it. As an actor, your whole job is to sell yourself. So really all I do when I go to interviews, I just sell myself when I go in there.
So you're saying that it's almost easier because of how varied your experience has been and that you have interesting stories built up? You think it's almost an easier experience?
I mean, I think so.
Okay.
Again, it comes down to an acting degree. Like I don't get nervous for those kind of things. Like you can be nervous and excited, like in a good way, excited about a job interview prospect, but I don't get nervous about going in and talking about myself. Like that part I'm comfortable with. And I think part of that is just, you know, built into you after you've done that time and time again. Because again, in LA, every audition you go into, you're selling yourself. And then any office type job, you're selling yourself because people hire a personality. You could be the most qualified person, but if you go in and you are pardon my French, if you're just a douchebag, nobody wants to work with you. So if you give that vibe, then they're not going to hire you. You have to be likable.
This is a little bit off topic, but you've pointed back to the strengths of having a dramatic arts degree and doing that for you a lot. Something that is very common among engineering students is that engineering students love to make fun of literally every other major, and dramatic arts in general is very often,
I'm sure.
very frequently made fun of. I'm curious, what do you think about that?
My dad was an engineer.
Okay,
He
nice.
was very supportive of what I wanted to do. I mean, I was very lucky. My entire dad's side of the family, they're all really supportive with everything. Not that my mom's side wasn't, but they are always interested and intrigued every time I would go home about what I was doing and what was up next. And maybe they were living vicariously, I'm not sure. But no, my dad was very supportive of that. But I am well aware. I was also a nerdy dramatic arts student. I took calculus in high school. So I got some of that from my dad. So I
Hmm.
was signing up for classes as a freshman, and my the advisor, or actually he was the chair of the department, was sitting there, and we were going through. It was just myself and one other girl because we were at the last orientation of the year before the classes started, and we were going through the math requirements, and I looked at the options of what I needed, and I said, okay, I'll take this. And it was like business calculus or something like that. And he looked at me, and even the other girl, they were like, are you sure? Because you're a theater major, you only have to take like math 100. And I looked at that, or it was college algebra, that's what it was. And I looked at them and I said, I've already taken calculus, I'm pretty sure I could walk through college algebra. And he was like very reluctant to put it down. I was like, it's okay, I can do it, go ahead. And I did. I aced my college algebra classes because it's not like I didn't know what to do. So, but I understand because I started my college career with a freshman class. We were a very small school, so it was a small group of people. But by the time I graduated, I think only four of us made it.
Oh, wow.
So, and I had to maintain my GPA to keep my scholarship. So, I understand the stereotype, but it's not. I went to school with some very intelligent, dramatic arts people, but it's all what you're into. I was very good at math, and my mom wanted me to major in math, and I was like, Mom, what am I going to do? Be a math teacher? I don't want to do that. I ended up being a teacher later anyway, but it was for English and karate. But yeah, I totally understand the stereotype, and it's just a matter of what you could do. On the flip side, dramatic arts people make fun of engineers because they don't have personalities. That's what they think.
Very well. Very,
So
very
that's
fair.
what they say. They know how to do math, they don't know how to talk to people. And that so I think it just kind of comes with whatever major you're at, depending on what you view as important. Like when people say IQ or EQ, what do you have? And I think that kind of goes with different majors. Like some majors they don't have to be social, whereas some majors you need to be social. So it comes back to kind of practicing everything. I think it's really great for anyone who's a non-theater person. Some schools make you take a public speaking class, but it's not the same as taking a dramatic arts class, like an acting class. And I totally encourage everyone to take at least one acting or improvisational class. It'll prep you for any interview you have to take later.
Right. I've actually seen that advice too, for just people who trying to network as well, taking like improv classes or drama classes. So I think that's a great call out.
People
Okay.
people get nervous meeting other people. So you can make fun of us all you want. I don't get nervous meeting people.
No, I am not somebody who has been very involved with theater, but I think I'm a good public speaker and I pride myself on that. And I've seen so often how that is such a valuable skill. So
And I also think
that's,
even though
yeah.
my dad was an engineer, he was a complete goofball. Like he was a total goofball. He didn't like being the center of attention himself, but he was also a ham at the same time. So I was like, he didn't want an event to be focused on him, but if he was there, he was going to make himself known, whether intentional or not.
That's too funny. Okay. I wanna pivot. I wanna talk about your writing now. What led you to start writing?
Well, I always enjoyed writing. I did take writing classes when I was in college, and I debated when it came time after I graduated if I was going to pursue a master's. I just knew I didn't want a master's in acting. I felt I did that, so I was like, what do I want to get a master's in? And then at one point, I was like, maybe I'll get a master's in creative writing. However, getting a master's is expensive. And again, I was an actor. I didn't make a lot of money. So when I moved to Japan and I put all of my adventures, so to speak, into emails, and I would send them home to people. And I just kept hearing from everyone when they would respond back, oh, you should put these in a book. Like, these are hilarious. You should put them in a book. So it took me a long time, but once I got back into the States and after a while, I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna put these in a book because people are still talking about them. It's years later. So I put them in a book, and that was pretty much that. I didn't really pursue any other books at the time. Then it was 2018, 2019. My best friend from college, we worked on the college paper together. So I did do writing in college. I was the managing director of our university paper, and she was the editor. And we worked together very well. She was writing various manuscripts, but she had one that was a fantasy book. And I told her because, again, with my English teaching background, I was very good with, knocking people for not using a comma the right way or an adverb correctly. So I said, you want me to look at it? And I did. And I messaged her. I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fun. I really like it. And I think I was on chapter 6 at the point. And then I kept reading. And then I was like, oh my gosh, I love the story. I love where it's going. This is amazing. But I'm on chapter 13 and I have no idea what's happening. And she told me she was in the middle of a rewrite. So I initially came on as her creative partner. I was helping her develop the world and think of things in a different way, because a lot of writers who don't have an acting background, they see their story, they're writing their story, they follow a structure. As a fantasy book, I was like, well, that's bigger. Like, there's so many things. You got to develop an entire world that doesn't exist. You can't pull from things that are actually real. So there was a lot of little things like that. So I ended up helping her, with a little bit of editing and creating the world. And then she sent the book and she tried to do traditional publishing. And after a year, she didn't really have any takers, but she wanted to publish the book. And so she asked me to come on, as she wanted to include me as a co-author, and wanted to do the self-publishing. And since I had already self-published, she's like, what do you think of doing that? And I said, that sounds great. Let's do it. So we went through another rewrite to make sure there were more things that I had written in there, which I had already written certain things. We discovered during our writing time together, she's not very good with body positioning when she was writing it. So we would send each other funny videos of like, this is what I'm reading and this is what I think they're doing. And she's like, no, they're doing this. And I was like, okay. So then I'd have to go back in. But it was kind of fun because if I read something one way and she reads it another way, then we know that other readers are going to see it differently. So if we want them to see the same thing, we had to come together and we had to understand it the same way for other people to understand it the way we were intending. And it kind of took off after that. We were talking and, we knew it was going to be a series. So and I've been doing that ever since.
Okay. I'm curious, what does the process of self-publishing look like?
That is a webinar session all on its own. It's
The
a
highlights.
lot of work. Yeah, it's a lot of work. If I would say the biggest thing is if you are not very good with patience, maybe don't do it. It's a lot of you. Even if you do get traditionally published, you are promoting your own book. So you still have to do all your promotion. Self-publishing, you're just doing more of it because you don't have a big name behind you. And I think the stereotype of independent publishers being horrible books is starting to it's fading a little bit because there's a lot of bestsellers out there. There's some authors making six figures with self-published books. I think a big part is just a lot of it's editing. If you don't actually get yourself a good editor, people aren't gonna read it. They want to read something because that's what you're going to get dinged on, is people are going to mention how horribly written it is. Or they'll say it's a great story, but it's poorly written. So you want to make sure, especially if you have a good story. But yeah, it's a lot, but just, I would say make sure everything is done and you are finished with your writing before you even attempt to do the publication part of it.
Sure. Most of the work in the publication then is promotion. Is that
Well, the actual publication itself. So we use Amazon, and I know other people do different ones, but we've been using Amazon. My original self-publication was through a different company that Amazon eventually bought out. So they just transferred everything over to Amazon. So I just stayed with that. They walk you through it. Amazon is really good with their Kindle Direct Publishing, their KDP section. It's really good with walking you through step by step, letting you know. So that's helpful. But getting the artwork uploaded, getting your template uploaded, if you're not very tech savvy, you're going to need a little help with some of that stuff. And then, making sure you put in all your tax information. And there's a bunch of other little steps that people just don't think about, but they're good. They walk you through everything. And then once it's there, you got to promote. Like once they approve and say, hey, it looks good, you're good to go, then you just have to be ready.
I think I know one of the answers, but what do typical avenues look like for how you promote a book? Like, how do people discover new books?
I think the best thing is live events. So
Okay.
if you don't have a lot of money, it's hard to find events that you can go to. Some events, like, so for example, I am a fantasy author. There are cons that you can go to. So I think there's one in Atlanta, it's called Dragon Con. But the table fee is like $400 to $500 or something like that. If you're not going to make that much money back in your book sales, don't do it. That doesn't make sense, especially since they're going to be big authors that are going to be there that people want to see. They're not going to go to Piddly Little You that nobody knows. You want to find local venues. Always start with your friends and family. Word of mouth is still the best advertising, but you want to go to places where you are going to make that money back. So I always look for myself, especially, and also because I'm doing most of it myself, sometimes I don't have anyone to come with me. If it's a big event and you've got to like park somewhere and go somewhere else and you're going to be all over the place, it's going to be really hard to move your stuff by yourself. So I try to find ones that are, smaller in their, I guess, stature with how many vendors they have, but maybe populous is what you're hoping for. So I look for lower table fees, something that's around $100 or less. And then just keep in mind you get what you pay for. So if it's a $35 event, that's great, get your name out a little bit, but it may or may not have people actually buying your book. If it is a straight up book event, then that's a crapshoot because there's so many other books. How do you stand out? What's different? Have a good elevator pitch when you're doing that. Make sure you have something that gets people's attention. But yeah, that's what I would say. Try to do some book events or any kind of, craft fairs or something that allow for books and authors.
Okay. What would you say has been one of your biggest struggles as you've been working to self promote? But then what would you say is also one of something that you've really found some success with?
One of the biggest struggles is it's kind of just when you hit a wall. You go
Sure.
to some of these events and that's great, but they're not going to keep having you back, especially if you only have one book. Try to have three books or go to a table where you've got a friend who's an author and they have a book so you can share a table. Having that. It worked out for me because I already had a book. So when we did our event, I was able to just kind of take my other book and have it there. But now there's three in the series and I have a spinoff, so I've got four all related to the series. I normally take my other book just in case because it's a travel nonfiction story where the rest are fantasy. So I have a little variety, but um that's normally a struggle is kind of finding the events to go to. You never know what people are going to want or be interested in. The fact that I have a series when I do go to events and people meet me for the first time, fortunately, I get people who buy the whole series. Like if they like the elevator pitch, they buy the whole series. A lot of people will buy the first one, so always have more of the first book if you're doing a series. But a lot of people after that, if they like what you're saying, they'll buy the whole thing. Once I get more books, I don't know if everyone's going to buy the whole thing because it's going to start getting pricey for them, but
Mhm.
great for me. Um, I think it's finding the new events is the success because I have noticed I was checking on some of my latest social media posts, and a lot of the people that are watching and everything are in the same states that I've already been to. So it's good that they're
Nice.
still paying attention, but means you need to go to new states. So I have some events coming up in Pennsylvania this year and this summer, next month and the month after, which is great because I don't have any readers there that I'm aware of. So it'll be good to kind of branch out. And that's another thing people have to factor in is you have to travel. So if you have to travel, that also costs. So you need to find places roughly if they're within an hour or two of you, it makes it a lot easier because then you can, especially if it's a 1 day event, you can do the drive in a day and save yourself on the hotel. But yeah, finding new events, that's it's a challenge to find them, but when you do and they're affordable, like make sure you can get yourself there.
Got it. Now I want to ask, you mentioned earlier that you have a few interns that work with you on this. What role do they play?
So I hired some book promotional interns. I'm telling myself if this works out, then I'm a genius. But I will caveat and say I only did it because I do internship programs. I've been working with interns for almost 10 years now. So I don't recommend people doing this if you don't understand how to do an internship program, but I designed an internship program. So I was able to utilize my professional work experience for my own personal work experience. So I hired them as book promotional interns, and one of them, which was to help with social media. So social media doesn't necessarily get you sales, but it gets you recognized. And then eventually, people who are readers, they will log in and, get something from you is what you're hoping. So it's just kind of, again, it's another avenue of trying things out. Another thing they were working on was the event portion, trying to promote sales. So I do have my books being presented in an event in California. I have those events coming up in Pennsylvania. All of my interns did all that stuff. So they found these things for me, and it helps because that was their job and I was able to go to my job and not worry about it. So they were able to kind of work and do that for me. So when you're doing it by yourself, you have to be creative in thinking of those things. And I thought, I work with interns all the time. Why don't I have my own?
But I'm wondering if there's something that you particularly like about working with interns or you found particularly
Mhm.
useful about working with interns.
So I think it comes from my time teaching as well.
Hmm.
I like helping people in general. And to me, any intern I've ever had, one of the things I tell them is, do you want me to check your resume? What do you want me to, because I've had to check resumes and do interviews and those kind of things. So I help them with whatever. So even if I can't offer a lot, I can offer experience that I can give back to them. And so I kind of feel like that's just life in general is how can you how can you make a trade? It goes back to that whole being likable. If you're not a likable person, people aren't going to want to work with you. Well, you also you can't just expect people to give you things and not give anything back. So for me, it's kind of like working in trade. If I am good to these interns now, they're going to be great to me later and they'll be willing to help me out regardless, because again, I think of them more as like they're my kids now. Like they're mine. Like I'm going to keep them regardless, but I want to see them succeed. So my thought for this was I actually got a lot of interest in this internship program because it was remote, which is good for students. It didn't pay a lot, but I realized later, I'm like, how many internships do English majors actually get to do that relate to what they want to do in life? And I was like, that's actually not very common. So I ended up getting a lot of English majors, writing majors, journalism, like a lot of that. Um, I got a few that were communications, which is again, it's a book promotional thing, so that works. So I had a lot of interest in that, and that was kind of the whole thing is that I created something that not many kids get to, do when they're in college. Like, oh, you get to do an internship that's related to what you want to do, and you get to see firsthand how someone is doing it before you get out into the world and do it. So I kind of wanted to go with that as like if you have something to offer interns, then you should do an internship program. And not that I'm not trying to sound crass or anything. I have enough random experience that I feel I have enough to give back to them.
I think that's a really wonderful way of phrasing it, though, and thinking about it is only doing it if you have something to give to interns. Because in my mind, I'm like, oh man, is it just because interns are cheaper? You don't have to pay somebody whatever. But I think that's great. Also, as well, too, I mean, the experience of being able to be so heavily involved with a company such as yours and being able to do like just all the social media. I mean, that's huge experience for an intern too, just in general.
Mhm.
I mean, that's awesome. I know the last episode that I just released on Wednesday, my guest's first experience was in publishing, and she didn't speak on it very fondly, but it was mostly because a glamorization of the industry and not necessarily doing what you want to. But I mean, your interns get to do exactly what you tell them they're going to do, which is
Mhm.
also very
Mhm.
valuable in itself as somebody
Yeah.
who has been an intern and continues to intern. So I
I mean, the
appreciate it on that
biggest thing
level.
is when people post a job, any job, and you read it and you're like, I could do all this stuff. And then you get there and it's like, well, it's this, but it's also all of these other things.
Hmm.
And some of them, whether you like doing them or not, there's one thing, but sometimes it's things that you're not skilled in or you don't feel comfortable in. And no one wants to go to work and feel like they're failing. Like
Sure.
that's
Yeah.
not something they want to do. And even if this was something newer for them, I come back to the whole coaching and teaching thing is I'm willing to work with them and train them. I mean, they created all the social media posts. I just had them put it somewhere, and then I had to approve it. I went through and I approved everything. There were ones I went back and forth on. And it was funny to see some of them come back with, "Oh my gosh, why didn't I think of that?" And I was like, "Well, because it's new and it's like I don't expect you to think of everything. Don't worry about it." But it makes it easier for me because then it's so much easier that if you just have to go through and check it rather than create it all yourself. Because you can go through a rabbit hole trying to create this, and you're also thinking about all the other things you have to do in your day to day. But if you have help and all you have to do is check it, then that makes it a lot easier, faster, less stressful. If having an intern stresses you, then don't do it.
I know a lot of times I've been frustrated where it's something where even you expect to have all these things that you're supposed to know how to do that you're really excited about, and then you don't do those. That's something that somebody says, when you're a few years in, this will be a skill that you'll use. So that's nice as well that you're not doing that too. And also the one-on-one support too is huge. Being able to have that relationship. I've done 2 internships. I'm in my 3rd right now. I've seen the gauntlet on what I like and what I don't like in an internship program. And it seems like what you've got going on is something that I'd like quite a bit. So that's why it's interesting to me. And I feel like I can speak on it. That's great. Yeah.
I think it's great. I hope they like it.
Yeah. I have to imagine having like a mandate of find promotional things. There's so much you could do with that. Like it's very, what you're doing, but it kind of, I have to imagine something you get out what you put in. And I mean, they're finding you stuff, so they clearly enjoy it some of it. So
well, and part of it too is making sure you give them direction. So even though I kind of gave them free creative ability to come up with stuff, I gave all of them the book that we are promoting, and that was one of my things is that because it's promotional, it's like sales. Sales is one of those tricky things that again, you go to an interview, you're selling yourself. You have to know and like the product. So
yeah.
if you're selling something you don't know and like, then that's really hard. So it was easy for me to find one of the questions I asked during the interviews, do you like fantasy? I didn't expect everyone to know who I was, so I knew they wouldn't have read the book, but they had to like fantasy. And then you kind of tell in the interview that they did. So I gave them all the book and I said, one of your first assignments, you got to read the book. You can't promote it if you don't know what it is. So giving them that portion, but also I created this whole like intern task board, and it had like all these tabs on it, and I use a shared drive that they can all get into, and I go in and that way I can put things in there and just send them an email saying, hey, this is in there, go ahead and look at it. So even if I'm super busy, it's just one little thing, bit of instruction, and then they can go from there.
Okay, we got it. I want to pivot a little bit back to the larger business or structure. You mentioned that you're working on promoting a book right now. First off, what is the book? You can please promote it here.
Noble Destiny. It is actually an interconnected standalone from the series The Jadson Journals. So this is the first installment from Tales from Zarya. Basically, Jadson Journals, the fun thing about that is each book is told in the voice of a different character. So we move the story along in each book, but it is a different character every time telling their story and moving it forward. For book 4, which is what I'm currently working on, JC, my co-author, and I decided to challenge ourselves, and it is now 4 characters instead of 1 in this. So each character will get about 5 chapters. Because that was taking a little long because we had to, tap into all of our multiple personalities. We had done an event one time and there was a woman selling a novella. And JC looks at me, she goes, I want to do a novella. I was like, okay. And then life just kind of got in the way for her. And she's like, just do the novella yourself. Like, just take it and do it. Because I had an idea for it. I was like, I think I'm going to do this. And so she's like, just go for it. Just do it, do it yourself. So basically what Noble Destiny is actually the prequel to this in the voice of one of the characters from the series. She is part of a different guild than everybody else. So it's taking everybody to that guild instead of Jadson, they're going to Zarya. And it's seeing how we got to the turmoil that we're in for the series. It leads up to that. So each chapter is a different section of her life that has like a pivotal moment that brings us forward. So it was a lot of fun to write that book. I really enjoyed it. Again, it's a novella, so it's a quick read. And if I did my job right, everybody who reads that book is now going to want to read the series.
All right. That's awesome. What are kind of your your priorities as you're looking for the rest of this year and the year after? Are you writing new books? Are you looking to publish this one, or not publish, but just promoting this one? What does your roadmap look like?
So again, always very busy.
Mm-hmm.
There's a thing when you're writing books and if you're writing a series. when you're first writing the series up to book 3, you're basically writing. Mostly you're focusing on writing.
Mm-hmm.
Then after that, almost 90% goes to promoting it. And so it gives you very little time to write. So that was another reason for the interns, is because this would eventually give me more time to write. So I gave myself a deadline by the end of the summer to finish my draft of book 4. I have about a third of it done, but I've been taking a hiatus from it to just catch up on life. And so my goal for the summer is to finish book 4. Then I've already planned on doing another internship class in the spring, and hopefully that will be promoting book 4 is the goal. It's going to be a lot of weekends writing, by myself, kicking people out of my house, just writings. But it's the summer, and sometimes it's really hot, and sometimes you want to just stay in air conditioning. So, I mean, that might work out for me. And then take a break and go in a pool somewhere. But for the most part, yeah, it'll be writing book 4. So that is on the agenda. And then next year, with any luck, hiring new interns and promoting book 4.
Very nice. I want to pivot now. I want to talk about the nonprofit you just started. Can you tell me about that?
So a friend of mine wanted to, oddly enough, start a podcast. She was just like, we need to do a podcast. And I was thinking about it. I'm like, that's great. We find ourselves hilarious, but are other people going to find us funny? Like, why would we be doing a podcast? And then she wanted to do it about, to start off, she wanted to do about a trip that we took to Iceland, and we would do, each episode would be one of the days that we were there. And I was thinking about it one day on my way home from work, and I was like, honestly, we should turn this into a nonprofit. And the reason being is, while we travel, when she and I travel all the time, her husband, we always thought, how can his name was Nick, how can we take Nick with us? And so Nick had Parkinson's, so he had a lot of mobility issues. So it was really hard to move around and do things. And so anytime we would travel, we were like, how can he come too? And what we were noticing in Iceland, there's a lot of stuff that we did that he wouldn't be able to do. It would be really hard for him. So I told her, I said, a lot of people can't afford to go on vacation twice. So what if we travel to these places and then we report back exactly what we're doing for Nick? We're reporting back what to look out for, because a lot of people can say that they're handicapped accessible, but that doesn't help you when you're there. Like having someone there being like, okay, it's off to the side and this is where you go, or maybe avoid this area, there's too many people and it's really hard to move. It kind of giving like, maybe there's a back road over here, it gets you around the corner. Stuff like that you're not going to see in a guidebook, or you don't want to stop at a store and ask someone, especially if you're going to a place where you don't speak the language. So having people that go ahead of time to figure this out for you and then report back, basically. So she liked the idea. Nick loved the idea. We sat down one weekend and we wrote all the places that Nick wanted to go. And we're like, we're just going to make a list and we're going to get started. And then we're going to give back to people and maybe get people to, see if we can raise enough money to send some people to these places, whatever we could do. Unfortunately, 4 days after we did all this planning and got everything and filed our 501c3, Nick unfortunately had a heart attack and passed away with complications to his Parkinson's. So now we're doing this more in honor of him instead of for him.
It's really incredible. I am very interested in the starting of a nonprofit. You mentioned filing for the 501c3. You mentioned that kind of like raw logistics stuff. But as you're looking to, because how old, also this project is relatively new, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. As you're looking,
we just signed did all our paperwork in March.
Okay.
So very new.
Yeah. So as you're looking to kind of get the ball rolling on that, do all the things that you need to do to start a nonprofit, what does that look like?
It's a lot. I mean, because it's starting a company essentially, so it's a lot of work. We have to create, the logo and come up with, all the content for a website. We have to create the website. We have to create fundraising pages and things like that. We have to get a bank account. You have to do all of these things. We were fortunate because I do work at a nonprofit, which I think is where I got the idea from, is that I was like, we could actually raise money and do this. Because of Nick's passing, we actually decided to add on a second podcast. So our website will have more than one thing on there, and we'll actually talk about grief and how people can deal with going through an unexpected loss. Kimberly, his wife, widow, she wants to talk about all the things that come up, like how, all of a sudden that person's not there. And so the money they were making isn't coming in, and people forget about that. It's like, well, I still have to pay my electric bill. I have to feed the kids. I have to do this. How does that happen? So we are going to essentially we're going to do two different podcasts. We're going to keep those episodes short because nobody wants to talk about grief for that long. Like we don't want to depress people all the time. But we also want to talk about the humor through it all. Nick was he liked to laugh. He liked to have a good time. So we'll talk about those things. But then we're also going to focus on some fundraising for helping others, like how in that situation she had to go through and she had to, get the copies of the death certificate, and then she had to submit them to places to prove it. And it's one of those things that's morbid, but it's like, if you're going through it, we're going to set something up so people can submit to us and, submit the death certificate, submit what's going on, let us know. And then we can try and raise money, and maybe through listeners try and raise some money to help that family, pay the electric bill, go buy groceries, stuff like that. Stuff that she had to think about. She was very fortunate. His parents are able to assist a little bit, but she's still struggling. So just having that fresh and for her gives us another avenue. He was very proud to be Italian American. So we are also going to focus on trips to Italy. I told her I think we do need to do a trip to Italy every year. So we'll just go through the country and see different avenues and different things. We will do more of like a roots tourism as well, trying to go to where, because his father's still alive, kind of go where the family ancestry is from and see those places as well. Take the kids with us and everything. The kids are older, but still in high school. Like there's still two in high school, one in college. So we'll work in the travel as well as the other podcast relating to what to do in those situations when that happens.
I have never heard of somebody trying to do something like this. Like, it's something I've never thought about. I'm able-bodied. My family is able-bodied, and my mother loves to travel. That's something that we've been fortunate to do as I've grown up. I really admire the work that you're doing with it, quite frankly. I think it's really meaningful for a lot of people.
Thank you. We figured it was kind of a little niche thing.
Yeah,
but it's
that's
something
good.
we were familiar with. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I lived with them while I was saving up to buy my house. So I was very close to the family. I lived with them for a few years, and I just saw the deterioration and in the past few years. It was really hard for him to move and go places and do things. And I have my own, physical issues. Sometimes I look amazing for my age. No, I look like I'm fine, but I have arthritis in my neck and spine. So I have my own issues where there are times where I've had to get wheeled through the airport because my back went out and I couldn't stand or couldn't stand for very long, could barely move. So it's stuff I've personally had to look out for when there's certain things like I can't bend over, like if I drop something, I can't. I felt horrible one time I was on a flight and my back had gone out and I had literally been wheeled onto the plane and I had to shuffle to my seat and I couldn't sit for too long, but I was flying from the East Coast to California and I had to stand up at one point just to kind of get the muscles to move. And this little kid dropped something and just looked up at me because everyone else around them was sleeping. And I just looked at this kid. I'm like, I'm so sorry. I can't help you. And they were too young to understand, but I was like, I can't, like, I couldn't bend down to help him. And so stuff like that, I've had my own issues. So I think mobility issues affect everyone. I mean, especially elderly who love traveling, but now they are having a harder time moving around. I think it kind of affects everybody, whether you have a disability or you're just, there's something, you're aging or you broke your leg or something, but you still had a trip planned. So what do you do now? That kind of thing. So it kind of affects everybody, which is what we were trying to think of, like, how can we help people with this?
I think you'll see a lot of success with it, actually. Just, I think it is very, like, you're right, it does affect everybody. Also, from my limited experience being in the trying to do content, it seems like niching down tends to be the move. So, as well.
Yeah.
So hopefully we'll find a lot of
We've had
success there.
a little delay due to the events from the spring, but we plan on recording our trip from Iceland as our starting point and doing some of the grief episodes. And we're hoping to get those recorded in the next couple of weeks and then kind of launch those out there. And again, just it comes back to same thing with books. It's promoting because at this point now we're just fundraising and asking people to part with their money is usually difficult. It's not a fun thing, but we're probably going to do pay to download for the podcast, and not a lot, just like a couple bucks or something. But that will be the a fundraising effort to listen to it. They'll do that, and the money goes back into the organization.
You've talked about through your recent ventures with nonprofit and then also with your publishing, you've worked with friends through it. I'm very curious, how does that shape or affect the relationships that you have with these friends and What's that like working with friends through large business ventures like this?
I would say it's not for everybody. The biggest one people always asked JC and I when we were writing books, they're like, how does that work? And I think because we worked on the newspaper in college together, we had a working writing relationship already. So
Hmm.
that was helpful. We also brought different things to the table, and I think that also like when you need the person for something else. So working with JC, she did a lot of the social media and the marketing part, and I did the publishing part of it. So we were able to branch off. When it came to the writing, we tag teamed and we would, work back and forth. So there was a lot of shared things, but there was a lot of individuality that we had. For the nonprofit, I have all the nonprofit experience, so the business side of it is mostly mine. Unfortunately, she has all the grief experience. Well, I can't say all of it. We all have grief. So we're going to be able to utilize that, but it's also the mission and the drive to do it. So I told her eventually, we'll just branch off and see where things take us. But the setting up of it is a lot of me just from my work experience, and she knows that. And then I think once it gets moving, then it'll be a lot more tag team situation again.
I think you mentioned, correct me if I'm wrong here, you mentioned finishing up the gala for work and now looking to a fundraising gala for this. Is that on the calendar?
A gala for this? No, Nick was not a gala kind of guy.
Okay.
So that was not the case. We're looking to do something in October, early October. His birthday was in October. So I thought it would be good that our annual fundraiser should be in October. Because it's the first year, we want to do something kind of simple. We were thinking of some kind of ticketed event where people can come and they get a meal, they get to hang out. We'll do a raffle. We'll keep it simple. I find fundraisers when people feel like they're getting something out of it, or they get to do something, those are the ones they want to go to. They don't really necessarily know they're at a fundraiser if they're getting something out of it as well. And that's, again, it comes down to the trade. Like, why am I going to give you my money? Like, why would I do that? And it's like, well, we're going to give you this. So
Yeah.
come here for this.
Hmm.
So that's kind of the thing. So for the first year, we'll try and keep it small and simple, and then maybe do something a little bit bigger next year, but we'll see how that goes.
Okay. Very, very nice. Well, Nicole, I think we're hitting time, but I do want to ask, is there anything else that you'd like to share? Something that you don't think we got to talk about, or some advice that you'd like to share for anybody kind of
I
at a
feel like
crossroads?
you kind of touched everything. You touched my eclectic background.
What can I say?
You did your homework.
Well, is there any advice that you'd like to share for
Um,
anyone, maybe early career or people who are looking to change
for
paths?
early career, my advice I always give is take any job. I don't care what your major is. If someone wants to hire you, take it, because just because you majored in it doesn't mean you're going to like working in it. Or just because you majored in something, you may not get that job right out of the gate. Like, just take something to put on your resume. Anything you take, you're going to get some form of experience that you can use later in life. And those people who tell you not to, if you waited tables or did something and they tell you not to put it on your resume, when you're starting out, put it on your resume. Don't take it off. Reason being, I had gone on an interview one time. I always keep my bartending on my resume. And people are like, why do you do that? And I was like, because it shows people that I know how to talk to people. I went to an interview one time and the man looked at it and goes, oh, you're a bartender. It was for like a contract position, something I was not going to like. But he said, he's like, I would hire you on the spot right now just because you are a bartender. Nothing to do with my experience, just because I was a bartender. And he goes, and the reason is I know that you know how to deal with anything that's coming at you, because you start with people sober, then they come at you drunk. Then they can be argumentative, they can be overly friendly. You're just used to changing. You're changing on a dime. So any kind of food service experience, just put it on your resume. It shows people that you have people skills, especially if you did it longer than a month. If you did it for a month, don't put it on there, because then it shows you don't know how to do it, or you just did it for a month. But if you did it like every summer when you went home and you have like a few years of it, put it on there, because it just shows that you have people skills. And that is super important when you're looking for a job.
All right. I love that. I think it's especially valuable advice right now, too, in the current job market that a lot of new grads are really struggling to find jobs, especially in like seemingly overly technical roles. I think that's very valuable advice, especially where we're at right now. Okay.
And you never know who you're going to meet, especially if you're in the food service industry. Like, someone might walk in and you might overhear them talking about a position they have available. Like, well, here I am, and I can do
Hmm.
this. Like, you just never know where you can kind of weasel your way in there.
Are there any last things you'd like to share in regards to anything that you'd like to promote?
Well, I would love for people to get the book if you're into fantasy, total nerd stuff. What I normally tell people is if X-Men go to Narnia and rebuild Hogwarts, that is my series in a nutshell.
Okay.
I can see the wheels turning in
Okay.
your head. There's magic, there's fantasy, but there's also turmoil. It's all kinds of different things. And their magic comes from their abilities, not necessarily just out of thin air. So it has to do with their DNA and everything. So it's a little more scientific and whatnot. So it's, sci-fi-ish. Yeah. So that's that. But I would love for people to buy the book and, get reading. And then if you're more into charitable stuff, I would love help um, with the foundation. It's a Double Noble Foundation. Has nothing to do with the book title. That just was like a weird little coincidence.
Well, okay then. Nicole, it's been an absolute pleasure talking with you today. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the episode. If you have any thoughts, feedback, guest recommendations, or just want to say hi, shoot me an email at nick@reroutedpod. If you like the show, leave a review, give us a follow, like, subscribe. You can find links to our website and socials in the description below. You can also find the links to all of Nicole's books, in addition to the Double Noble Foundation, in the show notes below. I will see you next week.